So people who want to get into this design industry, who don't have a like a tech background like yourself in computer engineering or computer science, but they had a background in design and they want to get into the design industry. So how do they get themselves noticed? Like what do they do to set themselves apart, specifically for product design?
Yeah, so I would say that's actually probably the more traditional route towards product and user experience design, which is, I think, more specific. So I feel like there's a pretty decently carved path for those types of people. There's a lot of arts and design schools. There's a few here in Vancouver that offer kind of the foundations of design, but also a pathway into more technical roles, specifically in digital product design or user experience design, like what we do here at Microsoft. So I would say, I mean, generally, I would look out for those programs. In terms of just like advice for those specific people, I think it's important to work on real projects, things that are actually like real things that you're building or a broader team is building. It's really easy. I see a lot of people online building kind of hypothetical products. I think that's a cool exercise and definitely something that is great to kind of demonstrate your skills and to kind of explore new avenues and new technologies that you might not have experience in otherwise. However, I think it's important to balance that with building real products. The reason being, in building products, there's a lot of difficult constraints that you're often met with. And I think part of the challenge and also the opportunity in product design is to sort of work around those constraints and deeply understand them and deliver something that's compelling to your users.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like just researching online, like say mock-ups on say like a restaurant website.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that like I wouldn't find any restaurant implementing. Like a lot of fancy design going on.
Yeah.
But not exactly practical. I've noticed that as well.
Exactly. And you should ask yourself, like,
it looks cool, but
it looks
like,
great, yeah.
When you ask the developer,
it no doubt looks great.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people like high-fiving and like getting really excited about this type of like work. And I think it's great for, setting, whether it's like an aesthetic direction, or exploring, very hyper simplification of certain experiences, like, really minimal UI. But maybe it's just me, I'm really interested in actually pragmatic and realistic solutions. It doesn't mean it can't be beautiful. It should be beautiful. It doesn't mean it can't be aesthetic. It should also be aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I think fundamental and the most more important than all those things is that it's usable and that it solves the user's need, and it can do so in a way that the users are going to understand. And I find a lot of these exercises, I look at them and I think, and this is just a hypothesis of mine, we would have to actually test the experience. I can't help but think to myself, it looks amazing. I don't know if users would actually be successful using this product.
So talking on this point, were there any like books, courses, or things that you did like to help you understand all these design principles, like staying like minimal, like designing like practical solutions, like to get a sense of those principles? Were there any resources that helped you?
I would say there's not one resource. There's a lot of things out there. I would say,
like, how did you learn how to create a practical product?
Yeah, I would say honestly the thing that has probably developed my design thinking and design philosophy up until this point has been more so not necessarily a resource, but more so a mindset. And the mindset is of curiosity of all the products that I use and interface with on a daily basis. So there's actually so I can probably trace it back to a book that I read called The Design of Everyday Things. I think it's Don Norman. who is the author. I might be incorrect. Yeah, Design of Everyday Things, and it's a really easy read. It might be like 150 pages or something. And basically, the premise of the book is it explains how to think about the design of all the products that you use on a daily basis, and all of the attributes that go into really good designed products and poorly designed ones. And you actually, by in the book, they lay out really good examples of even products that most people would consider very well designed, but are actually terrible designs. And maybe an example of that is similar to what we were just discussing, something that's very aesthetic, very maybe minimal, but not practical. And when the practicality and when the usability suffer as a result of the aesthetics of a product, that can have like very real consequences in the world. So like some examples of this, I think a famous example in the book, and maybe one you can relate to, are doors that have handles that are vertical and where you grab the handle like this, so it sort of implies that you're meant to pull on the door to open it, but these are actually push doors. So how many of those doors do you pull and it doesn't move, and you have that moment of frustration thinking like, why do I feel like it should work this way? That's a perfect example of, just a poorly designed product. So
well, yeah, so I guess on that note, when you're talking about, say, like this book outlines design principles, like being practical, compared to, say, software engineering. So now with the internet, a lot of people can just learn how to code online, like learn how to create software, and they don't necessarily need a degree. So that traditional pathway is now optional. It's not mandatory now. With engineering roles. Now with design, considering, so my thought is that it's harder, it's more competitive in the design field because you always have like more engineers than designers. Like for example, in our team, like we have you, but then there's so many, like 3-4 teams that are talking to you. So considering, like taking that into consideration as well, do you think for designers who want to get into like the high level, industry level, like product design area, do they need the traditional like university, get a diploma, do this like training route, or is that all accessible online, do you think now? Like, do you think like without going to a university or like a formal institute, people would make good designers?
I think honestly this applies to most technical disciplines. You don't necessarily need a university degree, but it helps a lot. So I think it's the same answer for engineers as it is